Hi, this is Ben Pascoe from learningsurfphotography.com. I'm going to give you my quick first impressions review of the Salty Surf Housings basic water housing for the Sony a6000 camera. So they also make options for the a6300 and a few other big, popular cameras that surf photographers use as well. But this one is for the a6000, which is the camera that I use at the moment for surf photography. So, quick rundown, I got the basic, I got the 2-stage trigger upgrade, and I got the flat port. They're longer of the two flat ports that Salty Surf Housings do at the moment. So first impressions, the wing nuts are a little bit annoying compared to what I'm used to, which is 5 recessed Allen bolts on the back of a housing. It's kind of what I'm used to on a DSLR housing, so you've got 5 Allen keys. I prefer this to the wing nuts. I still prefer it. It's fine though, it does work, and it is pretty easy to see the seal around the outside. The only exception to that is underneath here on this Salty housing right at the top, you can't see the seal that great. It's actually a little bit difficult to check that it's got a good seal there. So something to bear in mind, you just got to get used to it. It's not a really big deal, definitely not a deal breaker for the housing. So what have I done with it so far? I've had it for just over a week. I've used it 4 or 5 times in the sea now with various different lenses. Lenses that I have that fit inside this housing. So I originally had this Samyang 8mm f2.8 fisheye. This is the version 1. I just picked up the version 2. And they're both 8mm, they're both f2.8, but as you can see, there's actually a little bit of difference in the size. This one's about a centimetre longer than this version 2, centimetre longer than the version 1. And this dome is designed for, this is the 4-inch dome, they do a 6-inch one as well. It's designed for the version 2. So I've tried it with both. Obviously, version 2 works really, really well. No problems at all. Version 1, there is a little bit of vignetting in the corners, so like dark edges, you see the edge of this port in the corners of the shot. I worked out in Lightroom that it's fairly easy to get rid of that. You can kind of put some distortion or correction rather on there, and that'll get rid of the little black corners if you want to. So it's not the end of the world. If you have the version 1, you can still shoot with this 4-inch dome port and it'll be okay. But I'd recommend picking up the version 2. It's not terribly expensive. They're about the same price. So, and apparently the version 2 is a little bit sharper. Haven't really noticed any difference. They're both really great lenses. So I've also used it with the Sigma 60mm f2.8, obviously with the flat port rather than the dome, and the 19mm Sigma. I wanted to double check that the 19mm Sigma didn't have any vignetting from this longer port. This is I think it's up to 75mm length lenses go in this port, and there's a shorter one for 45mm length. Lenses up to 45mm in length. There's no vignetting though, it's fine. The 19mm works really well. I'll put up some examples of all these lenses that I'm talking about. I'll put up some sample photos that I've shot. Haven't really had any really good waves, but I have been able to get in the water and try it out. So, first impressions. The dome port with the fisheye, it's great. It's really small, it's really lightweight. It's better than a bigger DSLR setup that I've used in the past. Obviously I've got a 2-stage trigger, but the 1-stage trigger would work exactly the same way because both of those fisheyes are manual focus, so you don't need the 2-stage trigger for those. So one thing I was concerned about was the underwater shots, whether I could get a crisp in-focus underwater shot with this really, really small dome port. So I put the Samyang, I tried it with both, the Samyang fisheye as close as possible, so it's supposed to be 30 centimeters. But the actual focus ring does turn a little bit past that. Not sure that makes any difference. But I just turned it all the way as close as possible, closest focus as possible. It's been pretty sunny today when I tried the version 2 out, so I was on f8. So pretty, with a fisheye anyway, your depth of field is really big. So I was thinking, probably got a good chance of focusing close enough to get some in-focus shots underwater. And I did. I was pretty confident. I'm pretty pleased actually with the results. So in the center of the shot especially is really, really crisp. So anywhere around that central area you're going to be fine. towards the edges, this is probably something to do with the optics as well, that's beyond my understanding. It does get kind of softer, noticeably softer. But to be honest, for my use and for the majority of surf photographers, I'd say you're going to be fine. If underwater is your thing and it's your kind of speciality, it's something you really, really like doing, get the bigger dome, because that's going to be easier to focus underwater with this lens. I also shot the 19mm in the flat port underwater, and that was fine as well. So over-under style shots I did test out as well. So I've got a couple of all right ones. The problem is you kind of juggling the focus between over and under, because obviously above water, if you've got a, say someone's sitting on a surfboard here, they're 2 meters away, the underwater you're focused at 30 centimeters, underwater is going to be in focus, but above water is going to be slightly out of focus because it's already too far away. If they're really close, half a meter away, then you can get some good shots. And it's so wide, 8mm, that particularly if you turn it kind of portrait orientation with the water level along here, then you can get a pretty good shot really close. So, I mean, in terms of action shots of a guy screaming towards you on a wave, it's going to be nearly impossible to predict and get that just right. Good effort if you do, for an over-under. But if you're just bobbing around on the surface, like I was today with a friend, you can get really close and you can actually get quite a nice shot like that. So yeah, over-under is definitely possible with this, even with this tiny port. Again, if it's something you really want to do, then get the bigger port. 6-inch dome is going to be better for you on that one. So what else have I got? Buoyancy. So I wanted to check if it floats basically, and it doesn't, not quite. It does kind of sink. It's got slightly negative buoyancy. What that means is it's easy to duck under waves. You're not it's not a liability when you're swimming to the bottom to get under a big wave or something like that. If you're free diving or something like that, I know a few people have asked about that, then I think that's probably a benefit, being slightly negatively buoyant. Obviously, big downside is if you drop it or your leash comes off or snaps or something, worst case scenario, it's going to sink. So just bear that in mind. And I did try that with the dome port. Naturally with the 6-inch dome, because it's almost neutrally buoyant. So perhaps with a 6-inch dome, it would have that little bit more air in it and it would lift it up a little bit. I wouldn't bank on it though. But with the flat port, the big flat port and the 4-inch dome, and whichever lens I tried, it definitely sinks a little bit. Not ideal. So what else we got? Right, so I did take off the pistol grip and had a look underneath. Good news, the O-ring groove is on the body, which I'd expect, and I'm just glad that that was the case, because that means if you went for the non-basic version with the shutter button on the top, you could just blank this off with all you'd need is a flat piece of aluminium or whatever material, bolt that down, because the seal is all built into this housing rather than having to build a kind of groove into the plate that you block off this with. So small things, but that's good news. And possibly looks a bit more interesting for accessories like poles and other bits and pieces that you might want to kind of mount like that. The cable inside, it is a little bit kind of stiff well, I'm not sure it's stiff, but it's because of the way the multi-port connector, it is like a micro USB, but it's really long. It's wedged in there. It's just the way Sony have designed it. And because it's a right angle connector, just to make this as small as possible, then it's hard to get a grip on it. So whereas with this one, then you could just kind of yank it out using the big kind of plastic base. It's actually quite hard to do that with the right angle one. So what I've ended up doing is, this is my keyring. I've got this little, it's like a plastic coated bit of metal, which turns out it's ideal to just lever it up, just pop it up gently. So if you've got something that's not going to do it any damage, that you can kind of use to lever up get underneath the USB port with a USB kind of connector, and just pop that up. It's much easier. It doesn't feel like you're going to damage it then. So little tip for you. What else we got here? I did check. Someone asked on the site, they put a comment up asking, could you trigger the video button, like the pause record button on the a6000, which is kind of on the shoulder of the grip on the right hand side. can you trigger that with any other buttons? So presumably they're thinking, if you go for the basic option, can you trigger it? This is how I read into it. And I thought the same thing. So is there any way of triggering the video when it's in this housing? And I don't think there's an obvious way of doing it. So even when you're in video mode on the a6000 on the dial, pulling the trigger just takes a still photo. I think you can trigger with infrared, like you can buy a third party or even a Sony official infrared remote. And I've tested, you can trigger the camera through this front port of infrared. So it would be a massive hassle to do that. Just one way of doing it, and kind of not without making holes in the housing and putting an extra control on the back. Obviously you could just buy the non-basic version which has that control on it. I believe the Liquid a6000 has that control as well. The new Aquatech housings for the a6000 and a6300 do not have the video button on the back, so that's something to bear in mind as well. They're a bit like this basic Salty Surf housings. So you can't trigger it using the app. The Wi-Fi app does work through this housing. So I've tested with my Android phone in a waterproof pouch, and the camera sealed inside the housing, and I can access the Wi-Fi through it. So that's possible, but you can't trigger the video on the Wi-Fi app. Who knows why? I'm not sure why Sony have made it so difficult to trigger video. Hopefully it's not the same on the a6300, because that's quite video focused with the 4K, but who knows? I'm not sure, I can't confirm that, I haven't got one myself. So the other option might be like a hacked app. There is one available already for the a6000, which removes the 29-minute limit on the video and gives you access to different languages in the menu, I believe. And I looked into that. I looked at their GitHub page where it had all of the sample, like demo apps that they'd built. And what's interesting is those apps actually remap the delete button on the back of the camera to be like exit from the app. So that just kind of says to me that it is possible to remap buttons on the a6000 using this app interface that's built in, but probably way beyond me. I might look into seeing if I can do it, because the best solution would be map the C2 button to video pause record. Then we'd be laughing, because you could do stills and then you could just hit that one for video, and you'd only need a basic housing. And the Aquatech would be able to use the same technique as well. So yeah, even if that's possible, then you're going to have to go for the more advanced Salty Surf housings, or perhaps a Liquid Eye, probably many of the other ones as well, or get an extra control put onto either this one, I'm not sure if that's possible, you'd have to ask, or the Aquatech one. Pretty sure it would be possible on the Aquatech one. So that's video. What else have we got? Flash. So one of the sessions I tried was yesterday evening. So when it got dark here in the UK, I decided to see if I could trigger an external flash using the onboard pop-up flash on the a6000. So this has got a clear front plate. I figured this might be one of the advantages of having a front-loading housing. So what I did was I ended up removing about probably maybe nearly a centimetre of foam from the inside of the Salty Surf housing. So I'll just pull it open so you can see what I did, hopefully. And what that allows you to do is carefully pop up the onboard flash on the a6000. You can see, you might be able to see this, I'll have a close-up. I've just removed a tiny bit of foam here. I've kind of chopped it, kind of sliced it with a little knife, and then peeled it up and pulled off the little bit of foam. And then the a6000 slots in there nicely. You kind of put the grip end in first and then tilt it down to get around this control. But the pop-up flash is there, and you can just see kind of the top half of the little pop-up flash poking up. And sure enough, when I triggered it, you could see the flash coming, the onboard flash coming through the front. And I used this. This is a cheap Neewer. I don't know if that's how you say it even. This is a slave flash. It's not very expensive, takes a couple of AA batteries, I think. I'll put links up to this, to all the lenses, to everything that you can buy from a normal shop off the shelf. I'll put links up underneath this video and on the learningsurfphotography.com blog post that goes along with it. But yeah, essentially this is a Pelly case, just a pretty cheap Pelly case. That's some kitchen towel to just pad it out and keep it in one place. That's a little sensor, and when that sensor picks up the onboard flash when you're in the right mode, incidentally, it's you get a slave on the right hand switch, and it's S2 for the Sony, so you don't have to do any trial and error like I did. When that picks up the flash from the Sony, it'll, obviously I seal this in here. Apparently this isn't waterproof, Pellicase say. The big Pellicase things are listed as waterproof, I think. This one apparently isn't, but I've smashed it around the shore break, didn't have any problems with it at all. This is maybe $10 or something, so I'm really not bothered if it gets flooded. In fact, I've already killed one by flooding it at one of my old housings. That's a piece of an old GoPro case that I sawed out of the GoPro case, and then I used that 3M sticky stuff to stick it on. So it just gave me a place to mount it. So that's like a GoPro extender arm thing. And this clips into the GoPro mount that goes on top of the housing. So it looks like this. I'll put up a photo of it, how it actually looks. It's a bit unwieldy. This is a bit wobbly even, but I was able to use it one-handed, and it fired pretty consistently considering it was just using the onboard flash. I did have to make a little bit of a kind of baffle out of, I just used some matte black cardboard. This is a Samsung SSD box. So I just chopped out, you can see the shape I chopped out, don't have it handy for some reason. Fit that around the top of the lens, so that blocked, because the onboard flash was getting inside the dome and it was causing like an horrible reflection on the top. So I kind of blocked a bit of that with the cardboard. There was still enough getting out to trigger this. That fires the main flash, that gives you the flash, and I got a few shots in the shore break last night. Rubbish waves, and it was pretty grim conditions, foggy and horrible, but managed to get a couple of shots just as a kind of proof of concept for this video. I'll put them up, and I'll put all of this, like I say, in the links. But yeah, essentially it all looks good. It's like a really user-friendly design. I think it remains to be seen if I end up preferring a back-loading housing over the front-loading. I think I will, but we'll wait and see. I'm hoping that my other housing is going to arrive fairly soon, so I can do a bit of a test for you. But things are hotting up in the a6000 surf housing market, so this Salty were one of the first to market with theirs, and it is a really good, solid product. I had really good fun with it today. It's so nice to just be able to chuck the housing in your top of your surf bag. I use like a neoprene cover for this, there you go. It came with an Ike-Lite dome port. So I just chuck that on. I think Salty do their own port covers, I'm pretty sure, and leashes. This is off a Connect KTP18 trigger pole release. Great bit of kit as well, by the way. Haven't done a review on this, I don't think, so maybe I'll do that fairly soon as well. Great bit of kit. So I stole the lightweight lanyard wrist strap off that and put it on here. Just feels appropriate for such a lightweight housing to have that one on there. My friend said today, he was like, it's a shame it sinks, why don't you just stick some foam and polystyrene on it or something. I was like, it's going to ruin the aesthetics, and I'll just make sure I don't drop it. It's probably the best bet. So anyway, really great. I think, as I said before, you'll be stoked if you've ordered one already. If you've gone for the more advanced one, which has all the controls on the back, I'm not sure about all the controls, but more controls on the back, I'd really like to hear your feedback. If you put a comment underneath on YouTube or send me an email, ben@learningsurfphotography.com. I'd just like to hear how that's going for you. I imagine it's pretty good. The two controls I've got here are great. Like really, this top dial especially is really useful and really responsive. You don't have to push it in or do anything to it in order to engage with the button. So it's literally just as simple as that. Plus, it's not. It's got enough resistance that you won't easily, like if you're just doing that, you're not going to knock it and it's not going to change. But when you do want it to, it's really precise. So really good controls. Wouldn't be surprised if the back controls are every bit as good. And what else is there to say other than Coming soon will be my first thoughts unboxing of the liquid eye version, the C6000. Really excited about that, and I'll compare the two. But you can't go wrong, I don't think. I don't know. There's a couple of little, it's really minor kind of things which I think are down to my kind of personal preference. So I think you'd be happy if you bought this for the a6000. I'm certainly happy with it. I would recommend, if you've got any lens, any short prime lens or anything, I'd recommend picking up the extra flat port and the two-stage pistol grip, because it works really, really well. Really kind of, like I said in my unboxing, it's real kind of positive feedback that you've got to that focus point. And I was able to track people. I'll put up some photos as well. Took a few photos at Croyd. Waves were junk, but there was a few people in, so managed to get some good shots with the 60mm. Well, say good shots. Managed to focus with the 60mm and take sequences of shots. So it's as much as I could ask for on that day. But yeah, really good. Really easy to change the ports as well. That went really quick. What else? If you do unscrew this, you can get your finger in and remove the lens and take it out. It's probably a no-no. Probably shouldn't do that really, because you're letting in sand and other things directly onto the sensor. But I did it and it worked pretty well. It was easy and quick to do. So yeah, generally speaking, a really good product. What I wanted to do really quickly was just show you, because last time I did a comparison with a DSLR housing with a great big dome on it. Here's a more similar, this housing is old school. It's for a Canon EOS 630 35mm camera. So back in the day, this is an Acrotech housing. This was like the equivalent, basically. This with a 15mm Canon fisheye, which I don't have on anymore, unfortunately. In there, you got a dial on top, you got a button on the back for back focus, and you got a trigger release. So pretty similar setup. So this is kind of equivalent. This was the basic fisheye housing of its day, and as you can see, a bit closer and a bit more similar in terms of size and dimensions compared to the one I showed you last time. But yeah, it just goes to show. I mean, Acrotech have been doing this for a long time. Salty surf housings have come in and they've kind of knocked it out of the park with their first batch of products, I think. I look forward to seeing what they're going to come up with next. And yeah, the flash thing I told you about, that is a total workaround, a total botch job. And any kind of professional or anyone who's serious about flash photography and surf, it would laugh you out of the water if you rocked up with this thing bolted on the top. So Salty Surf Housings have put on their Instagram, I think it was just today, like an extended housing with built-in flash housing for the Sony official flash. That's the kind of thing you'd want to use if you're going to take it more seriously than I am. I, on the other hand, am quite keen on improvising and making the most of what I've got, and it did the job, and it was good fun, and it allowed me to take surf photos at night. Give me an extra session to talk about during this review. Anyway, I've blabbed on long enough. I will see you again as soon as I get my next a6000 housing. And yeah, in the meantime, if you are keen to get in the water and you've got a Samyang fisheye version 2, then pick up a Salty Surf Housings basic and you'll definitely get there. So yeah, thanks Salty Surf Housings. I'll speak to you again soon when I'm comparing this one to another one. Cheers.